definitely have them post, but I'm still reading the comments.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to have to necessarily manage those conversations, even though I want those conversations to happen.
Okay.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. But this is something I've noticed. I think it's so interesting that every function serves the dominant. Mm-hmm. And so even as you're saying this, I've been trying to like drive into like, okay, like pretty much like what is your reason for relationships and stuff like that. And it seems what I'm hearing, it's like everything's like information, which is serving the NI. So obviously you care about people. Yeah. They're not just like hamsters and gerbils. No. But it seems like your purest desire, like, yeah, you know, I just still want to like learn about the people, even if I'm not really engaging with them myself. Mm-hmm. Whereas like I feel like for me as a FE Dom, it's like I actually do want to engage with the people. Now I don't want to engage with too many. I don't, because then, like, you know, when you spread yourself too thin, which is something that ENFJs can often do, and that's what I used to do back in the past, that's when it becomes like a problem. You know, nobody really gets you. But I, like, when I find, you know, the people that I really, really mesh with, like, then I want to learn more about them so I can strengthen the relationship I have between them. I'm trying to always get to the epitome of bliss, intimacy, and harmony, where I feel like you're trying to always get to the epitome of understanding. Yes. So we're both doing the same thing, but my reward is the intimacy with the person, whereas I believe that you still enjoy the intimacy, just like I still also enjoy the understanding and the insight, but I feel like your reward is like the insights. I'm here with David. Y'all might recognize him from many of my older videos. This is my best friend, my brother. He was the best man at my wedding. We've been best friends literally ever since we were like 2 years old. Went to the same church, got saved together, all of that. And we're still kicking it like really heavy. We both got into typology. Once again, I think our most popular video is the INFJ versus the ENFJ in 13 minutes, which was a segment from our first video that we did together. Maybe it was our second, to be honest, because the slaves to save one and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But our first MBTI video that we did together, where pretty much it was almost an hour of just us, you know, riffing on what the differences between an ENFJ and an INFJ are. And that was like back in the early days, but now that was like almost 7 years ago. So we just wanted to kind of come on here to discuss some of the differences maybe still, but just also the ways that we've maybe become more like each other, come more in the middle, maybe some ways that we still haven't met in the middle, and, you know, just overall like maturing and development as an ENFJ and an INFJ. Trying to make sure you're not like stepping out of the frame. It's okay, we close, you know. So. First and foremost, do you have anything to say?
No, I cannot think of a single thing to say. I don't see anything relevant to say today. I feel like you covered it all already.
All right. Well, cool. Cool. So do you have any at least first thought or anything that you wanted to toss in there?
Oh,
get
man.
This started.
Oh, man. Okay. I guess just in terms of like, just talking about how we've grown. I feel like, yeah, you hit it right on like the nail on the head in terms of like, you have become much calmer. You used to have a lot more energy when we were younger.
I believe it.
You used to have a ton more energy when we were younger. And you sort of mellowed out a lot more. You tried to like even yourself out and become more centered. I think that's probably the best word for it. You become more centered in terms of how you want to present yourself to the world. And your focus has been more on trying to find your tribe. Because before it seemed like you were jumping around to a lot of different people, just trying to find a good fit. Some like people that you could, like, of course, be open to everyone, but you kind of wanted to try a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It was like a buffet. Yeah. But whereas more of now you have like, I guess, different entrees, different spaces that you're in. but you want a main meal in terms of what you can consume with others and stuff like that. And for me, I guess I was a lot more reserved. I'm not sure if I was like the typical definition of like what people would consider INFJ, but I was definitely more reclusive and definitely more neurotic, more in my head.
I think the self-preservation 5 plays a big part in that.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's really big.
Yeah.
And then for me, being a social 9 in the Enneagram system, I think that also plays a big part.
Perhaps. I think that I don't know. Perhaps, but I do think that as I've grown, at least mainly because of the work that I do, I've had to expand and I've had to deal with larger groups of people, which isn't, I guess, typical according to the INFJ like descriptions that you may see. Like, they're very much more to themselves, very one-on-one, which is how I used to be. But I think as I've matured, I've had to put myself in certain spaces and kind of like get used to dealing with groups of people and stuff like that. And it's still uncomfortable, but I do think that I've become more confident in myself to just be, instead of trying to please or put on for people and stuff like that. There are different masks and different coping mechanisms that I've been able to employ so that I can ease more into larger communities and not necessarily rely on only being one-on-one, because that would only hold me back.
Yeah.
I just kind of taking all of that like NI and just putting it out into the world is kind of like, it's kind of what I felt like I had to do in various ways. And I guess we can get into that, but what do you think about all that?
Yeah, no, I think that that's accurate. So I agree with just about everything that you said. I don't think that anything really stuck out to me that I disagree with right off the bat, especially the whole centered thing. I feel like one of the biggest things, and I feel like I talk about it all the time on my channel, one of the biggest things that I believe an ENFJ should do in their maturity and development is, thinking through the long term of their relationships. Because when it comes to FE, then I believe that FE is, of course, all about creating harmony, and it's very focused on the interpersonal dynamics between people. It's focused on understanding the strong points and the weak points in relationships, and how to strengthen and sometimes even how to break those points. It's very focused on feeding the dynamic, intimacy, stuff like that. And I feel like I've always craved intimacy, but in order to really have intimacy, I've learned that you have to know yourself on a deeper level. You have to be intimate with yourself so that you have stuff to be able to even share with the people that you want to become intimate with. So there's that. But then on top of that, the more that you get to know yourself, the more that you realize not everybody's really able to handle all of this that I have, and that I'm still working through. And so because of that, I have to be more careful with who I expose certain parts of myself to, certain TI thoughts that I might have. And, my NI, FENI, as soon as I might meet someone, then it's immediately okay, based off of the information, based off the interaction or the vibe, whatever it might be at that moment, what is the trajectory of this relationship? This is a seed. What type of plant is going to come from this? How much water is this seed going to need? Do you have enough water to be able to nourish this? And it's just thinking through all of this stuff. Is this a seed that you actually want in your garden? If not, discard it. You don't need to waste energy on that. You don't need to put stuff, and that's not anything against the seed, but it's more of hey, I don't have to water all of the seeds there because I can't, but hopefully somebody else will water it. I've really come to embrace the whole idea of not my monkey, not my circus, I think is the phrase, where it's pretty much it's not very ENFJ of me, but I've become more comfortable with not being so much in the FESE, like, oh my gosh, I have to help that person, but instead really think like, do I really have to help them? If I help them, then how is this going to play out in this way? Boom, boom. Who else is going to help them? You know, whatever. Do I have to become friends with this person? If I do, then, you know, how much, like, so just thinking through a lot of things relationally on a deeper level, rather than just feeling like, okay, I have the energy to be able to just, like, you know, go with all of that. And I feel like being a social 9 especially, or just a 9 in general in the Enneagram system, like the intimacy, like, you know, because 9s, we fall asleep to ourselves. And then as a social 9, then it's also like, oh, I'm not really, like, I don't think of myself as interesting enough. It's like, so instead I just kind of like blend in with the group in a way. So I feel like that plays a lot of a part, but like, especially just as an ENFJ, I think that we have that tendency of the FESE where it's like, oh, go help this person, go help that person. And you were still thinking through things, but I guess not as much as we could have been. We're not running the simulation as long and as deeply as we should have been. Whereas like with INFJs, like it's usually like the opposite problem where it's like the NITI, it's like they're thinking through the relationship and stuff like so much that it's like, hey, you're missing this. You should just try the relationship. So I feel like you have been, with you, yeah, you've been like getting more into spaces where it's like, now you are like, you know, actively like talking more and like you're engaging more with people. And I think that it's, yeah, I like seeing you, you know, actually come out of your shell. Cause like, it's like, I see you and I'm like, dang, this is the same dude. I just never will forget like how recluse you were, like, you know, with the hoodie and, you know, you had the glasses and you just be drawing, which drawings got you far now. But yeah, you know, you just were very like recluse in that way. Yeah. Everybody knew you as a debater though. That hasn't changed. You're still a debater. You're still not necessarily confrontational, but you're definitely more apt to speak your mind than I would be. And I think that makes sense with the TI being higher. You're more confident in your disagreements and your thoughts, whereas like for me, I tend to steel man other people's arguments. Like, so with the steel manning the arguments thing, it's like if somebody tells me certain things, then especially in the past, like I would think to myself like, I feel like this doesn't make sense, but it's probably not making sense because I'm not smart enough to understand it. So let me do a whole bunch of mental gymnastics so that I can make it make sense, because I'm not competent enough to actually make it make sense, which nowadays I've actually seen myself being more like, okay, this doesn't make sense, and I'm probably going to try to like poke the holes in there or ask more questions to like see how it doesn't make sense, or if it does, and you know, whatever, instead of just accepting like, oh, you know, let me make it make sense. But you've always been, from what I can remember, like the type of person that's like, you're just like, nah, and then you just start poking the holes and all of that, and I was just like, oh wow. So
well, that's the thing though, like I didn't actually, in order to like, I would have a feeling like, okay, something's not right here in terms of when someone is bringing an opinion that I may not agree with. So I'm not even necessarily like combating it with another opinion. It's more of questioning, and then I find my way through those questions. And if they stumble, that's when I know like, okay, yeah, I knew this wasn't right. You know what I mean? So it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm smart enough to see through whatever BS that they're giving me. It's more of like, I hear you and I understand you, but for some reason, the dots are not connecting. Okay. And so through questioning, that's when I'm able to find the answer that I'm looking for. And if the argument holds true, like if it stands up on its own, then it will withstand whatever questions that I have. And I'll keep on going until I'm satisfied. And that's how it kind of works to, I guess you could call that the NITI, working together through the FE, like with the one-on-one.
Okay.
So I guess like that's kind of how it works. It's not necessarily an inward confidence of like, no, that's for sure not right. It's just more of like, let's see how far this goes. And I think you could still or I think in a lot of ways you have employed that because you also do a lot of the similar things, but like you do it from a third person point of view. You know what I'm saying? Like you do it from like what about when this person says this?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's not, the question isn't coming from you. The question is coming from someone else. So it's a different tactic, but still the same motive and still essentially the same method. You know what I'm saying? So like, I think that's another way in which you have grown, and you're still kind of growing in the sense of like becoming more confident and being able to speak with people that you may feel as if are smarter than you in the moment or may know more than you in the moment by just poking holes via third person. So it's the same method, just a slight tweak on it.
No, that's true. That's definitely true. Like, whenever I'm talking to anyone, like if they're, you know, a Democrat or whatever, and they're very strongly like asserting such opinions, I'll ask them, oh yeah, that's interesting, that makes sense, but what would a Republican say to this? I don't know what the Republican would say. You know, like why, like if this makes so much sense and you're making it make so much sense, then why are there people in the world who disagree? Are they just stupid? And then it's like, okay, well, you know, a Republican might say this, that. It's like, okay, and then what would you say to that? And so, I do kind of like do that. And then if it's, you know, a Republican, it's like, okay, well, what would a Democrat say to this? And stuff like that. I was also going to ask, so when you are now dealing with more people, are you dealing with them like in person, or is this still like online, and how comfortable are you now with that on a scale of 1 to 10?
So in general, most of the interaction that I have is still at arm's length. So like it's dealing with a lot of people, but it's mainly online. And so when I'm addressing other people or when I'm talking to other people, it's usually like on social media. Because I have worked to try and build a community, and so I try to offer them value, and that requires a back and forth. That requires me to receive feedback and then act on that feedback. So it's usually on social media and stuff like that. However, because of the nature of how social media works, it has also opened up networking opportunities as well. So now I have to be engaged with other artists. I have to be engaged with other creators in general so that we can collaborate, so that we can talk. So there has to be different levels, I guess, different zones. So like there's like the general zone of like the audience that I'm trying to reach. Then there's the people that are like true followers. And then there's like a separate zone where like there's other collaborators that I can work with and stuff like that. And of course, and then there's my friends, and then zones within that and stuff like that. So being able to sort through it is difficult, especially with like larger audience. So say for example, I have to make a TikTok video. I actually hate TikTok videos where I have to put myself in it. Animating is not bad at all. I'm fine with that. But putting myself in front of the camera requires a lot of it requires me to psych myself up. I have to like, people don't know that. Like people think I can just sit in front of a camera or I can just like talk to people and like just chill. To the point where people have now begun to think that I'm actually an extrovert, which is weird. But they don't see me in my room contemplating, okay, how am I going to get the energy to be able to do this? How am I going to reward myself for doing this? You know what I'm saying? Like they don't see all those extra steps, and they don't realize that I would rather, there have been times where I went, if not for church, I would not have left my actual room for like weeks on end.
I remember making fun of you about that. I saw that on your Instagram. And you said something like, first time leaving the house in 3 weeks, and it wasn't even COVID or something. I was like, INFJs be like, dang.
I didn't even recognize it. It was my girlfriend who told me. She was like, you need to leave the house. She was like,
shout out to the ISFPs.
It was like, this is actually like crazy. There's no reason why you should not have left your house since last Monday. And people don't necessarily realize that because they believe how I behave or how I present when I'm trying to interact with them online is the same way that I am all the time. They just naturally assume that I'm going to bars or I'm going to a party or that I'm going to some networking event and stuff like that, when that's not the case. I'm at home working. Most likely.
Interesting. Okay, so I think that one of the things that I'm also thinking of that I kind of want to ask from there is, what is your ideal when it comes to your relationships with people? Like, I know, like, for me, I often talk about like my hierarchy.
Yeah, going back to what you were saying about using your NI to center yourself. Like, you already like have exposed yourself to the world and stuff like that because of your dominant function, but then like using your NI to center yourself and kind of like bring it all together, like condense everything, make everything concise, and then like sort of get focused with how you want to expend your energy.
Yeah.
Mine is actually the opposite way, in which I have always been more like condensed and reclusive with myself before being able to put it out.
Right.
So then now I think that's like the second stage of maturity, I guess, or at least a different level of maturity, when you have like come to a certain sense of intimacy with yourself, and then being able to put it out in the world. At least as an INFJ, a lot of descriptions that I see are like just people continuously being like intimate with themselves or only having a one-on-one, but not going out into the world. So like for me, as how it works is, I have always known that I wanted to draw and animate and stuff like that. But in order for me to actualize the potential of whatever I created, I had to put it out in the world and had to figure out different ways to be able to market it, how to be able to interact with the audience and stuff like that. Otherwise, people wouldn't see the work that I worked so hard on. So in a lot of different ways, that logic applies to whatever you do or however you want to grow. People won't be able to see whatever potential that you've been able to create. They won't see your brilliance unless you're able to put it out into the world and stuff like that. Whereas ENFJs may spend a lot of time into the world, but they may not necessarily reflect on what they have, like everything that they've collected.
Precisely.
So you have to come back to yourself.
Exactly.
And then like regroup before you go back out.
Exactly.
So it's like a inverse kind of thing, but both aspects are required.
100%.
So, yeah.
I mainly coach NFJs. Like they make up the vast majority of my coaching, and I get so many INFJs. Some of them are probably watching this, and I've said this to you several times. I get so many INFJs that almost brag on how introverted they are and how recluse they are, and how I like to spend time by myself, and I'm this and that. I don't really like people like that, one-on-ones and boom boom. And it's like, that's cool, but just so you know, and this is my TI truth, the less that you are exposing yourself to more people and immersing yourself with people in the FESE, the less I can trust your intuition on people in general, because you're not actually gathering firsthand information. You're always looking from the objective, and your NI is strong. It is. So you're gonna gather some stuff there. But you're like the most matured and developed INFJs that I have seen and worked with and everything are the ones who, like you said, almost are like, they look almost like ENFJs because they immerse themselves in the people, they engage with the people. Now, you don't have to be, and even then, I don't think that ENFJs personally are like this, where it's like you're at every single party and you're just being wild and stuff like that. Like I personally don't think that we are that type of extrovert. But you do have to put yourself in the FESE of being immersed with people, like being in a book club of some sort and discussing with people, testing, being like, not really like being put on the spot almost to have to like talk out your thoughts, like instead of just being like, I'm just so deep, people don't understand me, so you know what, I'm just gonna keep it to myself. And it's like, for ENFJs, it's the opposite. When I talk to them, it's like, you are spending so much time, helping people, talking to people, all of this with people. That's great. You've gathered a whole like 100,000 acres of information about people, but you haven't allowed that information to crystallize to become the insights that you need. So you are sitting on something that could become more than $1 billion worth of insight because you refuse to go into yourself, spend enough time with yourself in meditation or reflection, and all of those interactions that you've had with people, you're not allowing your NI to create the patterns there.
Right.
And so I feel like that's where like if the ENFJ is talking so much about like, yeah, I'm helping people this way, and it's the same thing. Like I'm not just coming at the INFJs. It's like, no, as an ENFJ, you got to do that too. So ENFJs who are too often one-sided, where they're just constantly engaging people without enough reflection time to be able to allow the patterns to bubble up, they are not doing themselves justice. Just like an INFJ who's just constantly recluse and, you know, in their own world and blah, 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 and not immersing themselves like in amongst the people.
Right.
They are also doing themselves a disjustice.
Right.
Yeah.
So like,
injustice.
You can probably think of better examples. I can't think of any examples right now, but think of all the most famous examples of each type. They're often more matured in both, like, their dominant and secondary functions, right? Like they go together, and that's kind of like how you can see it most pronounced, because that's why they are successful in whatever field or renowned in whatever they're doing, because they found a balance in being able to use whatever tools that they have. So like, I'll give an example, then you can give an example.
Yeah, sure.
So like for me, I like to make webcomics, but it's based on different observations and my imaginations and how whatever I've been able to see out in the world. I take that information, I create a webcomic or an animation, and I put it back and I reflect it back to the audience, and I offer it up as a question for them to then answer. Then I receive that feedback and I make more content. You know what I'm saying? So like, I'm not only making observations, I'm not only being able to make connections, I'm offering it to the community that I want to reach. They consider it valuable by offering whatever opinions that they have, and then they give me more feedback, which
you have been open to.
Right.
You have to be able to be open to feedback.
Right. And that's actually the most crucial part, because then I can't continue to make connections. I can't continue to make observations and learn from it, because I'm only to myself. If I'm not engaging with the community, then the cycle doesn't work, and it's not this cyclical type of process that helps both me and the audience that I'm trying to reach. Because even though I'm giving them something, presenting them something, I'm hoping that they learn from it, and I'm also learning from them as well. So it becomes this like back and forth that's really interesting, and it comes like there comes out of it like a certain type of synergy that I don't think a lot of INFJs may be able to tap into, because they aren't offering up themselves or whatever they want to present to the larger community.
Precisely. Yeah, no, big time. I'm gonna definitely use an example as well. But first, I also wanted to just tag on to that. Like, I know someone who has an INFJ father who pretty much, the INFJ father, he's white, and he was trying to understand why a white person would, even back in the day, want a slave. And so what this man did was he wrote a book about a white person who owned an imaginary friend / slave. And I haven't read the book or anything like that, but apparently when he put it out, and he was trying to run for mayor and something at the time too, like when he put it out, incredible backlash, and it didn't go well for dude. And the biggest thing that struck out to me, obviously I shortened the story, but like the biggest thing that struck out to me was like, bro, you're too much in that NITI. You try to create people in your mind, and you pretty much thought to yourself, if I can go off of the stuff that I've just observed from a distant view and write a book, then I can figure out life by myself by just having these characters that I've made up interact with each other or whatever in the book. And it's like, it doesn't work like that. You have to go and talk to people. You have to discuss. You have to immerse yourself more with actual real people, which is where the SE is. A lot of people usually attribute SE to like just going out and doing adrenaline junkie stuff and, you know, like being super stylish and all of that. But a big component of SE is actually going out into the real world and observing things at face value, which is the opposite of NI. NI is constantly running the simulation. It's constantly like, what does this mean? Even if it's like going above and beyond what actually is like right in front of it, stuff like that. And it's like, how much of this can I learn without experiencing it myself? So it's almost like I want to learn the lesson before I
have to.
Yes.
That's my biggest thing. Oh my gosh, I saved myself so much trouble because I've watched and listened to other people's problems so that I wouldn't have to also go through them. And by also doing that, I've been able to use that information and plug it into whatever stories that I'm creating. So then when I'm creating it, I'm referencing multiple things that people have told me. And when people read those things, even though those things I've twisted it so that like it's not a direct reflection of anyone, people read it and they connect to it and they're like, okay, how did this actually this reflects exactly what I'm going through or my best friend. And that's what makes it shareable, because now people are using their experiences and giving me more information, which I can then use for futures. So it's like a cyclical thing. I have to be able to engage with the outside world.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm not going to reach my full potential in whatever I'm trying to do.
That's good. That's great. So you're actually integrating the SE in that way. I want to ask you from that, like because I relate to you a lot in the sense of like I try to avoid making the mistakes myself by always learning the lesson from other people and stuff like that, you know. But has that ever like gotten you into trouble where it's like you've tried to avoid so much experience for yourself that you just glean wisdom from here, like, or do you feel like maybe even if it did, like you're blind to it, so you don't even know?
No, I mean, I actually learned this biggest lesson from Gary Vee, and it's like super simple, but like by working under him, it's been, the biggest thing has been just do it. Like whatever you're caught up in your head, forget about it. You're not going to actually know until you actually put it into practice. So you can think you know whatever is going to happen, but until you actually like try it out, you're not actually going to have that tangible experience to be able to reference in the future.
That's the SE right there.
So there's been a lot of times where, like, for example, we work a lot in social media, so we have to make a lot of content for different brands and stuff like that. So we'll have a certain idea of how things may play out, and it may be the total opposite, which is not what we anticipated. Despite all the data that we have, despite knowing our audience, despite being able to find the patterns and the things that they like, we can put something out into the world and get a totally negative like response. Then we still bounce back by being able to respond in kind with whatever audience that we have, and then they respond favorably. So we're still able to turn a negative into a positive. Same logic applies to me personally, in which I have thought about something, and I'm like, okay, I'm not sure if this would actually work, but the best way to be able to find out is to actually do it. Regardless of whatever the response is, I still win because I've learned something and I've been able to gain something from that experience, so that I can then use it and turn it around favorably for me in the future. Nice.
That's awesome. I feel like that's really big for INFJs to learn in that sense, because again, like lesser developed INFJs can focus so much on that NI, like I don't want to experience it firsthand, I don't want to be immersed in that or whatever. I don't trust myself. I have uncertainty with acting on a dime, and so I have to like anticipate everything, and they can trust that intuition so heavily that they don't verify it with the SE. And I feel like with me as an ENFJ, it's like I'll have the NI, and then being married to an ISFP, I still see how like, okay, I don't verify it as much as she does, but I see how I verify my intuition more than the SE inferior types would at times. And so I think that it kind of goes in that way. So like I'll have the intuitive insight or whatever, but then it's like, just like you said, like just do it anyway. I think this is going to happen, but just do it anyway. Or like, and have, be ready to like pivot if necessary, stuff like that. But for, so to give you the example with everything, as an ENFJ, our thing is, of course, once again, to continue to develop that NI. As y'all are developing FE, continuing to actually engage with people in the real world and actual relationships. And, you know, you're not just writing your comics and stuff like just from like your mind and your imagination, whatever, but you're actively like engaging with people. You're getting feedback from them, stuff like that. For me, it's like, yeah, I'm coaching people all the time. So I'm talking to people all the time about their relationships. I'm talking to my friends about their relationships. And then also with my own FESE, I'm in my own relationships, and I'm always like having like a bird's eye view of like, this is what's going on. And, you know, but so I'm just constantly collecting the information, but then I'm trying to spend enough time contemplating it so that I can sometimes make these videos so that I can help, you know, gather the wisdom and the nuggets from that to be able to also put it into, my coaching and stuff like that. And mainly, once again, like with FE, building intimacy and everything, I have a lot stronger of a view of like, okay, the type of relational garden that I've always idealized having is attainable. Back in the day when I was bouncing around and stuff like that, I wanted that, but I didn't feel like I had the seeds. I was looking for the seeds to be able to actually curate the garden that I'm looking for, but I couldn't. And because I couldn't go without plants, then it's like, man, I'm gonna just settle with almost anything. And so I was like watering seeds that maybe were not nourishing me enough.
Okay, just clarify what you mean by garden and seeds and plants, just in case people have gotten lost in the metaphor. True, just in case, because I'm keeping up with you, but I'm thinking about the people who may not have kept up with you, and they're like, okay, what are you talking about?
Okay, so I feel like every relationship is at different stages, it's a seed and it's a plant. So a seed is pretty much like, you know, the start of a relationship, you know, or maybe not even the start of a relationship, but the potential of the relationship. This seed is apple tree, like it's an apple seed, so it's going to turn into apple tree. I have to know what kind of seed this is and what type of garden I want to have. So in layman's terms, or more concrete way, I have to know what kind of friend this person will be, and if they fit what I am looking for in a friend. So I've always had like at least a loosely defined definition of like, these are the standards I want in my relationships. But because I kept on, like, I wasn't meeting people who were meeting those standards, and I need relationships, then I was kind of like settling for less than what my standards were, and I was feeding relationships that I'm not villainizing them, but like, yeah, like they just weren't what I was looking for. As opposed to like right now, I've met people who I'm like, oh shoot, y'all do exist. Oh, there are such thing as passion fruit trees. I've always dreamt of it, but they are just so rare and all of that. But now I've got enough in my garden. Which, you know, to make it concrete again, like I have enough people who actually meet my standard that I want to water them more. I want to give them more energy, and I'm okay with the others not getting as much energy from me, as not having as much access to me in that way. I'm still kind to them. I still put effort into the relationship with them, and, you know, all of that, but it's way less me throwing firewood into a fire when another person is just watching me constantly bring in logs. Going abstract again. But
no, I think people can pick up now. You've grounded it.
Exactly. Like like I'm not allowing myself to be the one who's hauling everything in a relationship anymore. Instead, I have people who are investing in me just as much as I'm investing in them, and I can actually share my truest selves with them, and it excites me to get to know myself more because of them. And I think that's also a big thing with ENFJs. So extroversion versus introversion. A lot of people talk about how, like, you know, you're energized by being around people. I personally disagree with that. I've met introverts who they say that they are energized by being with people, and I've met extroverts who say they're energized by being alone. I'm actually an extrovert who I really do believe that I'm energized by being alone. But when I'm with people, then because my battery's always going down when I'm with people. It may not go down as fast as in INFJ's, but it's going down. However, it's coming back up when I'm alone. The thing is, I think the real difference between extroversion and introversion is where do you focus your energy. So an introvert focuses their energy on their internal world more, whereas an extrovert focuses their energy on the external world more. So it could be, you know, the external world of experiences, if you're an SE Dom maybe, or of ideas and, you know, possibilities if you're an NE Dom, or, you know, projects and work or whatever, like if you're a TE Dom, or relationships and, you know, just kind of like creating intimacy if you're an FE Dom in that sense. And so for me, like even when I'm alone and I'm spending time by myself and I'm like, you know, really getting intimate in that way with myself, I see it personally as like, oh, these are going to be great gifts to present to those who I feel most intimate with. And I think that that's the cool thing, at least for me, where it's like, okay, even when I'm alone and I love my alone time, I'm getting to know myself more. And the reward from that will be the intimacy that's going to come when I'm able to share that with people who actually will accept the things I've discovered about myself in my alone time.
Gotcha.
Do you relate to that?
Hold on. Check the camera first. Yeah. I forgot your question.
Do you relate to that whole thing that I just said about
being energized, or
going into yourself and creating intimacy with yourself so that you can gift it to your truest intimate loved ones? Or is it like really just totally for you, and if nobody ever sees those parts of you or whatever like that, like you don't care?
Well, here's the thing about all that, right? Like, I think I'm the inverse, yes, in terms of like, I think I've always had a certain level of intimacy with myself. And I think that's partially what's given me the confidence to be able to go out and be myself, like unapologetically, because I'm confident in the thoughts that I think. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm confident, like, because I've done all the poking and researching and observing, I'm confident in my ability to be able to come to certain conclusions and have them stand on their own. However, I think the dangerous part is getting too self-absorbed, as well as the loneliness that comes with it. Right? Like, being closed off to myself had made me, it made me feel inept whenever it came to being able to interact with people that I wanted to interact with, because I didn't know what to say, I didn't know what to do. And ultimately, it just came down to not being able to have the practice in. Sometimes you just have to go and practice and risk making a fool of yourself. That's really the only way that you're going to be able to conquer a lot of different things, getting the raw experience, getting that raw data and being able to process it later on. That's just basic learning, you know what I mean? So I do think that I feel more well-rounded being able to go out, even if it's in smaller spaces, right? So like, there are friends that I've made that I don't think I've ever would have made, because like, they're also artists, but like, they're way more extroverted. These people are always doing something and they're always like making moves and stuff like that. Had I not been able to network and talk to them, I'm not sure if I would even be where I'm at, because there's a whole bunch of different collaborations. There's a whole bunch of pouring into one another that has happened because of those things. And it's difficult to be able to get to that point when you haven't put yourself out there. You're not going to be able to get the results that you want if you're not going out into the world. And that even sounds exhausting. But at the same time, that's how you know you've put the work in, right? Like, you're not going to be able to, if you want something that you've never had and you want people to be able to see whatever you're capable of, you're going to have to do things that you've never done before, that you feel weird about, so that you can be able to get to the top of those mountains and stuff. So it just really comes down to, okay, who am I going to talk to today? You know what I mean? Taking it, like, just giving it bare baby steps and really shooting your shot. and regardless of whatever context that's in, whether it be business relationships, just friendships and stuff like that, there's always someone that you can be like, okay, I'm going to try and talk to this person. If you even feel weird about that, you still have friends, or hopefully you have friends that you can be able to take on those challenges with, so that you can learn from your friend and how your friend acts in different environments, gain that information from them, and then eventually be able to take on those tactics and apply them with a friend or two around to be able to continue to do them until you don't necessarily need people. You can just talk. That does not mean that you're going to become like this Casanova or this person who can just like talk to anyone. But when the time comes, you'll still be comfortable in a social setting to be able to make yourself known when the time, like when the opportunity presents itself. Oh, so I just actually met my friend on social media, the one I met earlier, and he's an amazing photographer. This guy, I'm telling you, he's one of those people who's like, he's very calm, very centered, but he's very sociable. Like I literally went to the bathroom and he was already talking to someone else that he had never met before. It's like he's just one of those people that's just, he has that charisma. That's like unforgettable.
If people are wondering in the chat, do you think that you could passively say a type for him or not?
Ooh, I would say he's a calm ESFP.
Right? They exist.
Because he's very stylish. He has a very good eye for nearly everything. He's very active. However, when you speak to him, he's also very centered, and he talks like with a sense of conviction of knowing exactly what he wants to do, where he wants to go. But he's very, very sociable. Like it's very easy for him to talk to people, even though he's still centered with himself. He speaks from that mind frame, but he's ready to engage at any point. So that's what kind of separates him from the ISFP, I believe, in which like they're kind of like more reserved. If you approach them, he's ready to approach. You know what I mean? So it's like he seems like a very mature ESFP.
Nice.
And he has a lot of experiences that he was pouring into me with that actually helped me to be able to grow, because now I'm learning from what he
Dom.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I'm learning from what he's like been able to accrue, and it's like, okay, I get it. And now he's putting me onto different things. Mind you, we're basically the same age. So like he's been working he's been in photography, he said, for about like 13 years. Nikon Poppy. I'm gonna put him out there. Go ahead and follow him.
Sure. Already did.
But you can see exactly what I mean whenever I'm mentioning like his eye, but also like his centeredness. Like he seems like a very cool person at the party. You know what I mean? He's like the cool person wherever you go. But at the same time, when you talk to him, you understand, okay, I see why people like him. And he's been able to pour into me so that now I can get more of an understanding of like, okay, cool. I know exactly how you got to where you're at, despite not being where you're at, and now I can take that and employ it into whatever I'm doing.
For sure. So then I think that just to kind of go off in closing, I kind of asked this earlier, but I'm curious. What is your, I guess, ideal? Like, you know, like when I talk about garden, like for me, like, again, I have like my quote unquote hierarchy of relationships, you know, because I do engage with a lot of people. You know, there's subscribers, there's clients, there's coworkers that I've had, there's coworkers that I might have, there are acquaintances, there are, you know, church friends, college, you know, whatever. And then I have like my deepest, closest, like intimates, you know, you're one of them. Then I have my best friends, and then I also have like regular friends. You know, there's a lot of people that I have experienced, and I categorize them to know where my energy should be prioritized, and where to pour most of my energy into, and stuff like that, and who I want to continue to cultivate in my relational dynamic. Do you have like an ideal for your relational garden at all, or is it like, I'm exaggerating here, but I don't know, maybe it's true. It's like, oh yeah, I'm so much about that one-on-one that, man, it's just me and my girl and that's it.
You know what? It depends on what type of lifestyle I want to build. Because right now, most of my energy is going towards building the community and being able to utilize my skills in order to be able to like fulfill the dream of making an animation, making this like great web comic and stuff like that. So I have to be able to engage with other people. Ideally, I wouldn't have to. There would be someone else working on my behalf to be able to engage with all that stuff while I focus on whatever I'm doing. That does not mean I wouldn't engage with them all the time. It just means it would happen a lot less, so that I could be able to disperse my energy in other types of ways. So,
but if you were to do that, like if somebody else is handling like the relationships with other people that have to do with your work, how would your relationships?
so when I say that, I mean in terms of being able to market the content, because there's a lot of like one to many work that has to go into marketing and stuff like that.
sure.
This doesn't mean that I wouldn't still ask people questions. This doesn't mean that I wouldn't still like engage with the community and like just poke and prod and stuff like that. But it would just mean, okay, they can focus on the client facing stuff or like the audience facing stuff a little bit more. I still have other smaller communities like my Patreon. I still have other smaller communities like my actual friends, my mentors, my family, the intimates, as you call it, right? So like I still have this pyramid of people that I can still resort to, and it's still a much more comfortable space because like there's no judgment, or there's not as much judgment in these spaces. Like prime example is the Patreon. I would say that's like the lowest tier on this pyramid or whatever, but they are a good space because I even call them my tribe, right? And they're like always giving me feedback. It's never coming from a place of like judgment, but they still give me the critique that I need in order to be able to build. They literally did it yesterday, in which I put out the next chapter for them, and they were like, oh wait, this kind of doesn't make sense. I'm not trying to be mean, but this, I'm like, oh, that's actually very useful. Let me go back and then revise so that I can update it and stuff like that. And I have a better product to be able to give to the larger people. Then I ask them what they want. But if there's someone else who can handle like who's more equipped with being able to engage with other people and stuff like that, that means more energy for me so that I can go back and still actually live life. Because that's probably the biggest thing that I don't think that I have as much time on, because I'm so busy trying to push everything out. Right? Like I don't have enough time actually to be able to gain more experiences in the real world because I'm always working. You know what I mean? So like even what I am able to observe, I feel like I could observe so much more if I wasn't always trying to push this out or figure out this angle and stuff like that. Like it would just take a load off of me so that I could live my life, continue to talk to people that I actually know, and still be able to receive the feedback. Because the person who's managing the content, they're still going to tell me like, okay, this is what people are saying, this is what people are doing, stuff like that. And I don't have to scour the ends of the social medias to be able to gain that information. You know what I'm saying? So ideally, someone else would be able to handle that while I can spend more time with my friends, family, and doing more events and stuff like that. I want to be able to explore the actual world these days because I feel like I'm now at a point where I haven't gained enough experience of the things that I just kind of want to do.
Yeah. And so if you had somebody who was also to work on your Patreon or whatever for you, like push out the thing, like would you be like, nah, I want to keep this? Or would that, and I don't know, maybe you don't want to say that because they're watching.
No, it's not even that. Because I would still be honest with them about that. I would definitely have them post, but I'm still reading the comments.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I don't want to have to necessarily manage those conversations, even though I want those conversations to happen.
Okay.
So like even the person who's posting on my behalf and who's like trying to get data and stuff like that, they're still showing me what people are saying. So I'm still observing and stuff like that. I'm just not having to do the work of having to poke and prod. The person who's managing knows my vision for being able to like be like, okay, this is what people are saying, this is what people are doing, this is what I anticipate, and this is what actually happened.
And I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is something I've noticed. I think it's so interesting that every function serves the dominant. And so even as you're saying, because I've been trying to like drive into like, okay, like pretty much like what is your reason for relationships and stuff like that. And it seems, what I'm hearing, it's like everything's like information, which is serving the NI. So obviously you care about people. Yeah. They're not just like hamsters and gerbils. No. But it seems like your purest desire is just like yeah, you know, I just still want to like learn about the people, even if I'm not really engaging with them myself. Mm-hmm. Like I just want to like, if I could just watch, not in a weird way, but if I could just like watch their lives and just be like, oh yeah, this is nice or whatever, and just gather the information, then yeah, you know, I don't have to interact with you, but you know, that's it. Mm-hmm. Whereas like I feel like for me as a FE Dom, it's like I actually do want to engage with the people. Now I don't want to engage with too many. I don't, because then, like, you know, when you spread yourself too thin, which is something that ENFJs can often do, and that's what I used to do back in the past, that's when it becomes like a problem. You know, nobody really gets you. But I, like, when I find, you know, the people that I really, really mesh with, like, then I want to learn more about them so I can strengthen the relationship I have between them. I'm trying to always get to the epitome of bliss, intimacy, and harmony, where I feel like you're trying to always get to the epitome of understanding. Yes. So we're both doing the same thing, but my reward is the intimacy with the person, whereas I believe that you still enjoy the intimacy, just like I still also enjoy the understanding and the insight, but I feel like your reward is like the insights. And so that's why I was asking, like, you know, like for me, I would think like if I was in your position and somebody was like, hey, I can take the Patreon off your hands, I can do this, whatever, I would be like,
no, that's the fun part.
Yeah, like I like to still engage with them, you know, whatever. You can take probably like the other people, like people like around there, like off my hands kind of thing, but like they're still part of, you know, this. Whereas like I feel like for you, like when I just asked you and you were like, yeah, you know, I mean, I would still read their comments, and I'm like, yeah, but you're not engaging with them, and it feels like, yeah, that's not really a need for me.
That in that sense, I am still very much detached. Like before, when I was younger, I was definitely a lot more detached, and out of necessity, I've had to be able to engage with people and stuff like that. But I think it takes energy to be able to do that, and it's not that I don't want to do that, because I found ways to make it fun in terms of being able to like make content that quote unquote triggers a response from people and stuff like that, so that I can gain the insight. But that also takes work, and it takes care to be able to do it properly and be able to make sure that like I'm not like crossing any boundaries with the larger audience. And it takes like, you have to twist a lot of different knobs and stuff like that to be able to make sure that you're still creating a safe environment while still being able to engage their imagination, like trigger their thoughts and stuff like that.
That's a lot of FE work.
That's a lot of work. You know what I'm saying? So like I still want to be careful with people, but I also like, it's serving the purpose of being able to have people, not only me understand them, but also hopefully have people understand each other as well. So like that takes a lot of work, and though it's worth it, if someone else is more equipped to be able to do that and they're offering their services, I'm not going to say no.
Yeah, and that's not a problem. I'm like I always say, there's no type that's better than the other. I just wanted to, like, you know, I think that that's like a really another like a big thing that could be a difference in ENFJ and like INFJ in that sense. And I feel like you explained it like very well. So yeah, that was dope. I guess in conclusion, all I'd pretty much really say is like, you've been my brother for years, you know, like decades, literally. And so speaking not just, you know, like for INFJs, but also like specifically with you, like I've just really appreciated how thoughtful you are with everything in life. Like how much you're always like, you know, I've always just like on my phone, I have the emoji next to you, because like you've just always been that, and I've always been that too, but it's kind of always been like for you it's always been like apparent, like this is what I'm doing, I'm analyzing, whereas like for me it's like I don't want people to know that I'm analyzing, so I'm gonna you know, they have no idea how much I'm sucking, like, you know, like how much information I'm taking, and that for me kind of like allows them to be more natural, so that it's like, yes, give me the information, you know. But all that to say though, like I've always appreciated like how much like you really analyze and you think through things, and I come to you with a lot of different things, you know, and we don't always agree on stuff.
Sorry, I laughed a little too hard.
Yeah, we don't always agree. But I love how, you know, especially over time, you have even worked on the FE, like, you know, with places where I felt like you weren't like the relationship was not getting where it needed to. You fixed that, haven't had problems there like ever since, and you've just actively like provided counsel and, you know, thoughts and everything. And then even when I still made my own decisions, and I wanted to still experience things with my SE and everything, like you still were there in that way. And I respect that a lot about you and about other INFJs, especially the more mature ones. So
you know what's crazy about that is that I actually learned a lot of the necessary tools to be able to take care and to be able to like manage proper relationships in a way that is helpful, in a way that is thoughtful, in a way that is like I guess the best way that I can come up with is like gregarious. It's actually from you. And in a lot of the ways that you've been able to manage and take care of your relationships and how much you've poured into it kind of shone a light on how little I did in order to be able to manage those things, and how like it showed me the problem areas and what I was doing. So I think in a lot of ways we kind of like exposed each other to a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And so it's funny that you're saying that I'm thoughtful when a lot of it, like a lot of the tools that I learned in terms of being able to talk with people in general came from you first, and of course other people I've observed from, but like it's like especially in our teenage years, right? I was going to a lot of different events because of you. You know what I mean? So through observing you secondhand, that's when I learned, okay, let me try this next time, or let me try this next time. And then it began to build upon itself. And then that's when it eventually led me to be more comfortable, because what I even noticed back then was that you asked a lot of questions. And I was beginning to learn that on my own already, but it was how you did it and how you slid it in, because I'm more bold with it. I'm just gonna shoot, straight shooter. Yeah. But you were more of a person who built up to it. You made sure that the person knew that you weren't like a predator, or like you weren't like something to be scared of. You were a friend who genuinely cared and wanted to help. And you did that consistently by like, okay, I care for you in this way, or like, I'm sorry that happened. Like, do you mind if you share? For me, I would just be like, so how about, you know what I'm saying? Like, you would be sure to ask people what they were comfortable with and go at their pace instead of just like forcibly trying to get information. Because before I would be more of an interrogator or an investigator. These days it's more of like, okay, a counselor, somebody who is trying to help, but they're not forcing you to do anything that you don't want to do. So that's what I think I've been leaning more and more towards, and I don't think I would have gotten there without insights from people like you.
Dang. Well, respect, man.
Respect.
For sure. Love you, man. And thanks for being on my channel once again.
Yes, sir.
If y'all don't know my guy, check him out.
Oh, yeah,
tell
it.
Yes, he's on YouTube. Everything's gonna be in the description. But yo, tell him, put him on
YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. It's all the same. Individual. People say individual. I don't know why, but you can
know why.
You'll find it in the description, and you'll see what kind of work I do.
For sure. So, hey, if y'all have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure to drop them in the comments. Follow the kid. And also, just thanks for taking the time to watch this. And don't forget, you matter.
There you go.
Done. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video. And if you enjoyed that, please like and subscribe. It actually really helps out my channel a lot, so that more people who actually care about what I want to say can actually find me a lot more easier. Also, if you did enjoy it, then maybe you'll enjoy a lot of my other content as well. So be sure to check out some of my playlists where you'll be able to find a lot of my older videos and older content. And last but not least, if you would like any profiling sessions or coaching sessions, be sure to check out denzelmensah.com, where you'll be able to book me and you'll see the rest of my services. But thanks again, and have a great day.